In the early morning darkness of November 20th, 2018, an expensive New Jersey mansion stood quietly in horse country Colts Neck until it erupted in flames and horror. Inside were the charred bodies of Keith Caneiro, his wife Jennifer Caneiro, and their 2 young children found dead after the fire consumed their home. Authorities say Keith was shot outside the house, his wife shot and stabbed, and their children brutally stabbed, all before the fire was set. Prosecutors say hours earlier, his brother Paul Caneiro allegedly set fire to his own home in a nearby town. A rushed blaze, prosecutors argue, was a ruse to mask the real atrocity. Today, Paul Caneiro sits in a courtroom facing first-degree murder, aggravated arson, and weapons charges. And tonight, the shocking allegation made by the defense about the person they say is the real killer. But first, Brendan Banfield, a former IRS criminal investigator, is accused of masterminding a twisted and calculated plot to murder his wife, Christine, inside their Herndon, Virginia home. Prosecutors allege that Brendan, seeking to escape his marriage and pursue a secret affair with the family's Brazilian au pair, Juliana Magalhães, posed online as Christine to lure a man, Joseph Ryan, under false pretenses of a sexual encounter. Once Ryan arrived, Brendan allegedly shot him in the head, then turned the knife on his own wife, stabbing her to death. The au pair, who later pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter, claimed she participated under Brendan's influence. Authorities say the murder scene was staged, but Brendan maintains his innocence. Was this a chilling act of betrayal, seduction, and premeditated violence fueled by lust and deception? Or is the husband the victim of a lying au pair lover? Tonight, we are live from the courthouse as this highly anticipated trial gets underway. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. A busy day, busy week. It's going to be a busy month here at Court TV. So many big trials all taking place and sort of converging. And we begin tonight with a big case out of Virginia, Fairfax County. Same courthouse, courtroom where Johnny Depp and Amber Heard went at it right here on Court TV. This one, our victim is Christine Banfield. She was a mother and a nurse. And that's important because being a mom of a young child, but having a job as a nurse, very time consuming, long hours, you're gonna need some help. So Christine Banfield, who was a great loving nurse, everything we've heard about her, and a great mother as well, along with her husband, decided they needed help in the house because of what was happening. The problem was she was married to Brendan Banfield, her husband/cheater. At least those are the allegations that are being made. We'll see how it all plays out inside the courtroom. But a husband, yes, he's an IRS agent, works for the government, has a good job, carries a gun. He's an armed IRS agent. So he's more law enforcement than, sitting in a room auditing your taxes. But he's also a cheater, according to prosecutors. And he was cheating with the person that he and his wife, Christine, brought into their home to help them with their child. And that, of course, is Juliana, the au pair/killer. Oh, yeah, she's a killer. She's admitted it. She pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Didn't call her a murderer because she didn't plead guilty to murder, but involuntary manslaughter. She got a sweetheart deal where she will basically walk at the end of the trial. She served a couple of years already, but she was hired to help with the child and apparently help dad also. And that becomes the motive in all of this, that these two are hooking up and perhaps planning some sort of future together, a future at least without the mother and nurse, Christine Banfield, in the picture. It was these two in a hot tub. These two shacking up as soon as Christine was out of the picture. She took a deal. She's going to be the big witness. Brendan Banfield, the IRS agent, he's the one on trial. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft joining us live from Fairfax County, Virginia tonight. Great to see you. What's the latest tonight from Brendan Banfield's trial?
Vinnie, the big news today is a jury has been seated in this case. So who will be on this jury? We have 7 women and 9 men. So 4 of them will be alternates in this case. So that took up most of the day today, the jury selection. And Vinnie, there were really some interesting questions for the jurors. So why don't we go ahead and we're going to put up some of those questions that were asked from the prosecution. So if jurors could accept testimony as proof, that was one. Who on the jury had a live-in nanny or an au pair, and whether that would impact their ability to be fair. Also, whether flaws in the investigation would undermine their ability to be fair to the government's case. And then some of the interesting questions came from defense counsel, whether any jurors had or knew someone to have experience with BDSM, because, of course, the prosecution's theory here is that Brendan Banfield got on this FetLife website and orchestrated this whole situation where his wife wanted someone to come over and engage in rough sexual play with a knife. Prosecutors are saying that Brendan is the one that set up that account unbeknownst to Christine. Some of the other questions, whether any juror had experience with marriage infidelity. Also, whether jurors would give greater weight to the testimony of law enforcement. So at the end of the day, today, Vinnie, that jury was sat, and tomorrow the opening statements begin at 10 a.m. First, we'll have preliminary instructions, and then, of course, we'll get right into the opening statements. So it's going to be interesting to hear what the prosecutor and defense have to say in this case. We do know that FetLife account is going to be something defense counsel is going to talk about as to whether it was Brendan that actually did set that up. They're saying the evidence doesn't point to him.
Right. So then the evidence would have to point to his wife, Christine, the nurse, that she was the one who was into this BDSM, rough knife play, rape fantasy sequence. That'll be interesting. You know, maybe they can sell it. Maybe it's true. I don't know. That's why we have a trial, right? Now, you went to the crime scene today. What did you see? What did you notice?
Vinnie, we decided to go over there because, you know, the scene itself inside that home, when we've taken a look at some of the images, it was a gruesome crime scene when investigators went in after those 911 calls. But we went over because in our research of this case, we had heard that as part of the alleged scheme into the killing of Christine, that the au pair, as well as Brendan, had kind of did a demonstration outside the home as well as inside the home where somebody would be upstairs in the bedroom making some kind of noise, and then someone would be outside to see if you could really hear anything from upstairs in that room. Let's go ahead and just play what we did today. Magalhães told investigators that she, along with Brendan, did a test from the second-floor window to determine if anyone standing out here could hear what's happening upstairs. So when we were out there, we just wanted to sit around and listen. We stayed out there for quite some time, and we were listening. It is extremely quiet in that neighborhood, Vinnie. So it's hard to imagine that when they did that demonstration that they wouldn't think that people would be able to hear what was going on upstairs. If, of course, this is something that they ended up doing, which we will hear more about as this trial unfolds.
Yeah, and that would demonstrate, obviously, a lot of planning going into this. You know, would you hear screams? Would you hear gunshots? Because I guess they wanted to control the timing of everything, allegedly, right? According to prosecutors, control the timing,
yes,
control when 911 was called, get the story straight before all that happened. I guess make sure the child who was there was okay as well. You also took a trip somewhere else. Where else did you go today?
We ended up going over to a McDonald's because in the research of the case, we also found some information that Brendan Banfield possibly was over at this McDonald's when the au pair called him to tell him that something was going on at the house. Let's go ahead and play that. Authorities believe that Brendan Banfield stabbed his wife, staged a crime scene, and then he came here to this McDonald's. He waited here until he received a phone call from his au pair, the woman he was having an affair with. This was all part of the plan, according to investigators. The au pair told him something strange was happening at the home, and so he hurried back home. And Vinnie, then we also did the drive. We also did the drive from that McDonald's back to the home to see how long it would take. You know, in that area where the McDonald's is, it's a commercial area, so lots of different restaurants. And then you drive a little bit further, very woodsy area. You go past a farm on the one side of the road. Then you get to a subdivision with a lot of nice homes, and that's where the area becomes really, really quiet. When we did the drive, it takes about 8 minutes. So the video you're taking a look at here, we sped this up when we did the drive to just give viewers an idea that if he then received that phone call, as prosecutors are alleging, from the au pair saying that something strange is going on, he had planted himself at that McDonald's, and then he would have had to make his way back home. And then after he made his way back home, that's when eventually police arrived, because these 3 911 calls were made. The first one made, nothing really came from that first 911 call. The second one made, again, nothing from that second 911 call. But then that third one is when Brendan Banfield gets on the phone and says that someone has come into their home, stabbed his wife, and that he shot that intruder. And then we see that body camera footage of the au pair telling authorities, really kind of just going on and on as to what exactly she claims took place inside that home.
Yeah, there's a couple things about this, right? One, you're stopping at McDonald's and you're hanging out in the parking lot. That's fine, I guess, for quite some time. The other part of it is, if she she sees something that's strange. What's strange? Oh, someone's over at the house? Okay. Well, how about calling Christine to find out who's over the house? Or how about if there's a car there and she's not there, you can call 911 right away. You have to wait for Mr. McBreakfast to come back. It's an interesting concept, this whole story. We'll see how it plays out. Kelly Craft will be on top of all of it. She's in Fairfax, Virginia.
Thanks,
right
Vinnie.
now. Thanks so much, Kelly. Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Al Wunsch III, along with criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossley and national parenting and family relationship expert Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Great to see everyone. Al, so to me, and this may be the defense might be the alleged plan itself, right? Which was, I walked in on this guy, he was killing my wife, so we shot him and we called 911. We did what we could do. Why is he hanging out at McDonald's? And why? What is so strange that the au pair is going to call him? If it's so strange, why doesn't she call Christine? Or maybe she didn't. Christine doesn't pick up. Why didn't she go in the house? What is so bizarre that's going on here?
Well, the bizarre thing is what he's going to be able to do to offset what the au pair is telling them and what she's already pled to. I mean, you know, what my thought is that he's going to make up a defense that she was going to get rid of her. And so that's why she cooked up this plan, because she wanted to stay in the country. And she wanted to then get married and then be able to get her green card. So, I mean, you know, that's the whole thing that's coming to mind. What's the defense going to say on this? I mean, they have a...
Wait, are you saying that the defense is going to buy into the scheme and say it's Juliana who set this whole thing up?
Why not? Who's the perfect person to do it? The one that was in perhaps looking at being deported, the one that was looking at the fact that she was going to not be able to live in the great country of the United States, that the fact that she was going to lose her job. Okay, I mean, there is a very, very good chance that they're going to turn this around. And I mean, it's the Plan B defense. It makes sense. You know, oh my God, she's so jealous of this woman. She set this up, and now she's trying to turn it on me, okay, to get a sweetheart deal.
So she just got lucky that, I mean, Darnell, what I'm hearing from Al is he's going to have to argue that, for her plan to work, Brendan would have to be stopped at McDonald's. Otherwise, if he's driving to work, he could be 40 minutes away.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way it looks is that I'm struggling with this because when you watch the au pair give her statement, she seems more cold-blooded and calculated than even the person who did the killing, which is definitely the husband. I mean, for her to stand out there and give that statement, knowing what happened, and not even have any remorse is horrible. But I don't think he's going to have a good defense. He did come home because they planned this, and he did exactly what happened. And so Al's saying that he's going to try to shift it to her. I think he's going to have to play it out, because if he shifted, you have too many shifting theories, then it doesn't bode well with the jury. So he's going to have to play it out.
I guess there's one of two things. You're either pointing the finger at Joseph Ryan, or you're pointing the finger at the au pair. What do you think, Dr. Sue?
I think you can point it in either direction. I think that they totally were in on this together.
Wait. Who's in it together? Joseph Ryan and the au pair, or the au pair and the husband?
I think the au pair and the husband. Okay? I think they're in on it together. I think that she maybe planned this herself, or they planned it together, and they're going to, either turn on each other. And what's going to end up happening is there's a lot of missing pieces here that we don't know. It's very odd that somebody was just sitting at a McDonald's, right? And then all of a sudden gets a phone call and comes home. I mean, to me, it's discarding the wife or whomever so that they can have their life together. And they got caught.
Yeah. Well, she got caught.
What about the fact that maybe the au pair is telling him, listen, she's hooking up with somebody. She's cheating on you. She's doing this, and you don't go too far away.
Wow.
Because he's supposed to be
I get it. We're short on time tonight. We're going to dive a lot more into this as everything begins tomorrow. Think Tank staying with us. I want to show you a picture, though, of the other victim in the case. His name is Joseph Ryan. NBC4 Washington, D.C. was able to obtain this picture of him. The bottom line is this guy was basically brought into this, didn't know anybody. He was on a website, alternative lifestyle stuff. He thought he was going to a consensual rendezvous, and then all this happened, which is horrific. We got a lot to get to tonight. Like I said, busy days and nights here on Court TV. When we come back, another new trial began today, one we've been waiting years for, out of New Jersey. Paul Caneiro, accused of murdering his brother and his brother's entire family, then torching his mansion. Opening statements today, shocking opening statement from the defense. Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates Monique and Spencer Tepe murdered in their bed while their children slept just feet away. Weeks later, a shocking arrest points to someone from Monique's past. How did the killer get into the home? Tonight, we investigate. Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brendan Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was there, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair murder trial. Live coverage this week following jury selection on Court TV.
There he is, Paul Caneiro. Finally, it's taken years in New Jersey for him to come to trial. He's accused of murdering his brother, his sister-in-law, and his niece and nephew, his brother's entire family, wiping them out and then torching their mansion in Colts Neck, New Jersey. All along, we've been wondering, what's the defense going to be? What are they going to say? Is it the mob that did it? Is it someone that they owed money to that did it? Because his house was then set on fire the same morning. But prosecutors say he did all of it himself. He torched his house, he torched his brother's house, and killed his brother's family. Take a look, take a listen to the defense opening statement, as today we learned what their shocking theory of the case is.
I am not here to defend what happened. I am not here to defend against those crimes. I am not here to defend a tragedy. I am here to defend Paul Caneiro. Because Paul Caneiro did not do this. He did not commit these crimes. He did not hurt anyone. He did not harm anyone. He did not set any house on fire, and he certainly did not brutally murder the family members that you will hear he loved and cherished and adored so much. You're going to hear that Keith's family and Paul's family, they were so close that they actually considered themselves one big family instead of two separate families. What you're also going to hear is that Corey Caneiro was on the outside of that. He wasn't a part of that. He wasn't a part of the businesses, and he wasn't a part of that close relationship. He was on the outside. But they never investigated Corey. They never looked into Corey. They never did a single thing to investigate Corey. Not a single thing. They searched Paul's house, and they searched Keith's house. They never searched Corey's house. They searched Paul's phone and his electronic devices, and Keith's. They never searched Corey's. They got surveillance video from the area of Paul's house, the same way they did for Keith. They never did that for Corey. And they took and they tested Paul's DNA the same way they did Keith, Jennifer, Sophia, and Jesse's. But they never even bothered to get Corey Caneiro's DNA. I ask that you pay close attention to the incredible lack of investigation that was done in this case, especially as it relates to Corey Caneiro. And they want you to follow the evidence. They want you to follow the money. Well, so do we. Because when it comes to the $3 million that was at stake, what you'll learn is it doesn't lead you to Paul. It leads you directly to Corey.
At the end, I think she said it leads you to Corey. Think about this, okay? Think about this for a second. If, in fact, he's guilty of murdering his brother and his family, not only did he take out his one brother's family, he's now pointing the finger at his other brother as being the one who actually did it, okay? Now, in the alternative, well, I don't know Corey. I know some of the evidence in this case, but I don't know Corey. You know, does he become a viable, potential someone else who did all of this? Let's bring back in our think tank, see what they have to say about all this. We lost Dr. Sue for just a minute. Darnell, what do you think of this? I didn't kill my brother. It was the other brother who did it.
Well, the first thing I was thinking was, when you said NJ, I was thinking, does that stand for New Jersey? And then I was thinking, why isn't Al on this case, since he should be famous like I am here in Connecticut? But then I thought, you know, Al's not me. So when it comes down to the theories here, you know, Al should be all things New Jersey. When it comes to the theories here, I think she's going to probably ask for jury instruction of what they call inadequate police investigation, which is actually something I've used in the past. If the court feels that you've reached a threshold, they can give the jury that instruction. So she's saying the police was inadequate, and because they were inadequate, they didn't investigate the person who's really responsible for this, which is Corey, and she's just raising reasonable doubt. So not bad. You know, I don't like the fact that she's whining a lot. You never want to do that as a lawyer. So she's really trying to show pain, I guess, and why not? You know, but I get the point. She's saying inadequate police investigation, so they missed the real killer.
Al, you think this is the way? So all along we were wondering where was the finger going to go, and it stays within the family here. So the allegation is that Corey kills his brother Keith, his sister-in-law, his niece and nephew, and then tries to torch his other brother's house.
Yeah, well, just a point in fact, unlike Exact Change Crosland over there, who takes any case for a nickel, for a dime, or whatever, this gentleman has the public defender. That means he couldn't afford me. Okay? That's how that works there, Darnell. But this is the most ludicrous opening I've ever heard. I mean, no one pointed the finger at the brother. Even the defendant never pointed the finger at the brother, never said, you know, maybe you ought to look at him. And how old is his case? Years old. No one brings up the baby brother. Now, all of a sudden, he's brought up as, well, they didn't necessarily say he did it, but they did say, well, he was never looked at. Okay, well, maybe because they found DNA and other incriminating and blood evidence and everything else on her defendant, on her client. So, like, I think this is going to come back to haunt her big time, because when the first question I'd ask the police, why didn't you look at the younger brother? Well, I found his DNA. He's turned off the tape machine. He had blood evidence. He had this. He had motive. That's why. And I think the jury's going to get a little upset about this. I think they were better off going with the mob hit, because there was no way they could prove or disprove that. The brother, that's going to be a real problem for her to explain when all this other evidence comes out. And it's going to be interesting to see where her closing goes based on all of that.
Dr. Sue, glad to have you tonight, family relationship expert. This is the Caneiro family, 3 brothers. One brother accused of taking out the other one, but now he's pointing the finger at his other brother. What are your thoughts about what's going on with the Caneiro brothers?
Well, this says to me that he's trying to save his own butt, probably, and that's why they're pointing to anybody else. You know, when I first read this, I thought to myself it had to be a mob hit. That's what went through my mind as well. But what this tells me is that these brothers are willing to turn on each other at any stage. And possibly what I would love to know is, what was the relationship between all of these brothers throughout the years? Were they in trouble with the law? What was going on? Things like this. Because Vinnie, what goes on in my mind is, did this brother really go in and stab his brother, his sister-in-law, but the 2 kids as well? Did he really go in there and stab those young kids? Because that, to me, is beyond horrendous. And it takes a lot to stab children.
And they're saying the evidence is there. They're saying the DNA of the 2 children, blood, was found on clothing and gloves that were found in Paul Caneiro's basement. So some strong potential physical evidence and all this. Unbelievable. When we come back, let's talk about the motive. Why would one brother kill another brother? Is it the fact that blood and money don't mix?
When he arrived, he turned off the generator to their home, and then he cut the power to the house from the outside by removing the electrical meter. And then he waited in the dark, waited in the shadows, waited for his brother Keith to come outside. Sure enough, when Keith came out to check the generator, the defendant gunned him down. The defendant pointed that loaded handgun at his brother, and he pulled the trigger 6 times. 5 of those shots hit Keith.
Wow. First of all, great opening statement by the prosecutor. It was so well put together, the storytelling aspect of it, but it was just easy to follow, and it all made sense. Defense opening was good too, but a little less to work with there, right? So the allegation here is that Paul Caneiro cuts all the power to his brother's mansion and then is just lying in wait for him to come out. And that's when he shoots and kills his brother, goes in, gets his sister-in-law, goes in and gets his niece and nephew, then sets the whole thing on fire. Okay, I want you to take a listen to more of this opening statement, because there's another section of it talking about why. And I've been talking about this in the build-up to this trial. I said, this is a huge hurdle for prosecutors to have this jury understand why. Take a listen to what the prosecutor said today, because I think she did a great job. Watch.
But basically, Keith had set this trust out back in 1999, prior to him and Jennifer getting married. Now, per the terms of the trust, it was essentially an estate planning tool, by the way. Per the terms of that trust, whatever money would be in there at the time of Keith's death was to be used for his wife. Now, if both of them were deceased, then per the terms of the trust, whatever money was in there would be used for the benefit of their children. And if all of them should become deceased, then half of that money was to go to the defendant and half was to go to their third brother named Corey. Now, after Keith created this trust, he purchased what's called a whole life insurance policy from Canada Life Insurance Company. The face value or the death benefit payout for that policy was for $3 million. He then transferred ownership of that policy over to the trust, so that now the trust became the beneficiary. The idea being that upon Keith's death, that money would go into the trust and then be distributed according to the terms of the trust. In this case, Keith appointed none other than his trusted older brother, the defendant, as his trustee. As trustee, you're going to learn that the defendant was afforded a great deal of control and discretion over this trust. There's no doubt. You're going to hear that testimony. But what you're also going to hear is that that discretion did not afford the trustee to steal and deceive and act in bad faith. Now, like with any life insurance policy, there were premium payments that were due periodically to keep the policy active. In this case, those premium payments were due quarterly. And the way it worked was that a bank account had been set up at TD Bank called the Keith Caneiro Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust. But basically, it was just a checking account. And the way it was funded was through direct deposits from Keith's payroll. Now, the defendant's job as the trustee, or at least the job that he took on, was to make those premium payments from that bank account. So essentially, whenever those premiums were due, the defendant would go in to the online banking account, and you're going to learn that the defendant did most of his banking online. He would go into that account and make those premium payments over to the insurance company. Now, in about January of 2017, the evidence will show that the defendant began taking money from that trust bank account, that TD Bank account, sometimes to the detriment of paying the premiums. Sometimes you'll see he paid the premiums, sometimes he didn't. Now, in April of 2018, Keith called him out on it. When confronted, the defendant told Keith that he accidentally transferred money to the wrong payee, that he went and paid a school loan. $25,054 to be precise, but he accidentally transferred that money. He apologized, he said he would make restitution, and he said that he had his, quote, head up his ass, his words. But what the evidence will show is that not only did the defendant not make restitution, but he never made a single payment to Canada Life again after April of 2018, not one. But what he did do was he continued to help himself to that money in that checking account. And this time was different, because this time he began covering his tracks. You see, the defendant began altering the bank statements. So now we come to November 19th of 2018. Unfortunately, it was on that day that Keith and his insurance adjuster, a man named Ronald Artigas, who you'll hear from, it was on that day that they made inquiry with Canada Life to determine the status of Keith's life insurance policy. Well, it was then that they learned that no monies had been paid to Canada Life since April. They spent a good part of the day trying to figure it out. And they just couldn't understand it. They just couldn't figure it out, because they're looking at the bank statements that they received from the defendant. And the bank statements showed money going to Canada Life. But Canada Life was saying they hadn't received any money. It was that afternoon into the evening that Keith Caneiro made two relatively short but tragically fateful phone calls to his brother, the defendant. Now, you are going to have the unique opportunity to see and hear these 2 phone calls. And that is simply because Keith and Jennifer had security cameras inside of their home with audio and visual capabilities. Now, let me be clear. You are not going to see these murders occur. The cameras stopped working at 2:52 a.m. when the defendant cut power to the house. But what you are going to see is these 2 phone calls. You're going to see Keith Caneiro in his final hours. You're going to hear what he is saying to the defendant, what he is yelling to the defendant only hours before he and his family were murdered. The first phone call took place at 3:50 p.m. Keith called the defendant, and he tells him, Canada Life is saying they haven't been receiving any money. He tells him, I need to access the money. And he asks the defendant if he could send him the online password for that TD checking account so that he can go in and do the research himself. The second phone call takes place at about 6:05 p.m. Keith calls the defendant back. And this time, Keith now demands the password for that online checking account. And he's yelling at his brother, I need the login, Paul. Paul, I need you to wake the up. I need to see where the money went. He tells the defendant that he has a couple of hours to get back to him, like 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock came and went. The defendant never did get back to Keith with that password. Instead, he began making plans. Plans that were executed about 8 hours later when he snuck out of the house in the middle of the night in his white Porsche Macan. And you know how those plans ended. Greed and desperation. Is that it wasn't so much about what the defendant stood to gain from Keith and his family's deaths as it was what he stood to lose. What he stood to lose had they lived.
Wow. Dr. Sue, how's that for a motive?
It's pretty good, let me tell you. I mean, this case, I didn't know all of this information beforehand, but now it seems as though that, not that this was premeditated, but he was doing things and probably knew what he was doing, and this was going to ruin him. He was going to be in trouble. He was scared, and he had to get rid of them and all the evidence from knowing this, from anybody finding out what happened here. Look, you know, Vinnie and families, right? Their greed and jealousy and money, it is the destruction of all evil. Yeah. And usually when you have these issues within a family relationship, something ends up like this, and it's tragic, and my heart is just like crushed from what happened to these young kids and their mother and their father. It didn't have to end this way.
Yeah, as you said, greed and jealousy, he was raising his hand, I think, for us all. Al, motive.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Vin, at consulting the good book on this, Cain versus Abel, Cain and Abel, and in it you see that there was jealousy, which was what induced Cain to slew his brother Abel, his older brother Abel, and that there was resentment, anger, and flawed nature that led to the crime. Now, you know, we don't need motive. As a prosecutor, you don't need motive, but it is really nice to be able to wrap it up in a bow, because a lot of times a jury goes, well, why would they do that? Well, this prosecutor just set up a ease on down the road, right on the golden path, and set everything up perfectly as to why he was in a position where he struck out the way he did, and he took out his brother's family. It was resentment, anger, jealousy, and his flawed nature. So kudos to her. Wonderful job on that opening. It was just absolutely phenomenal. You hit it on the head when you said that she led a path. I mean, this is a shining path right to a guilty verdict. And that, you know, the whole concept of why, the motive, is mapped out beautifully. But can I say one thing? That
unless you want to hear from Darnell.
Well, I just want to say one thing, and Darnell's not going to be upset about. Darnell won't be upset about this. Our hearts and wishes are out to Jennifer Brandt, who's going through a tough family situation right now. She's our usual person here on Monday, and prayers are with her, and we miss her. And I just wanted to say that we all love her and can't wait till she's back. No offense, Doc.
No problem.
I concur. So, Vinnie, the first thing I was going to say is I think when Al mentions motive, I think what he's trying to get at is that motive is never an element of the crime, so it doesn't have to be proven. However, a prosecution who lays out motive is certainly going to be in a better place than one who doesn't. She did an excellent job laying out motive, and I hate when people are doing the presentation that she's doing and they say the F word. The letter. She said the word, and she was very good in being strong about it, respectful to the court at the same time. But you have to give the jury that feeling, and she gave it to them effectively. And the part that I disagree with is that I don't think, obviously, there's no rationalizing stupid people. Even if they found out he was siphoning off that money, I don't think he was going to go to jail. But the gravy train would have stopped. But it was $25,000. It was no great money. But when you are not rational, then you do things. You burn down that beautiful home, kill those beautiful people because of that. So I think that's the tragedy, that you just don't put it in perspective.
Big thanks, Darnell Crossland, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, and Al Wunsch. Thank you all so much. When we come back, I'll reveal something else you need to know tonight. Plus, coming up next hour. When dentist Spencer Tepe never showed up for work, police uncovered a brutal double murder. Now his wife Monique's ex-husband stands accused of pulling the trigger. Was this a calculated act of revenge or something even darker? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
The tragic murder of Keith Caneiro and his entire family.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. Accused of child sex abuse. We're talking about an actor. You may recognize the face. That's Timothy Busfield. Actor, been in so many programs through the years. Accused of inappropriately touching a child when he was 7 and 8 years old on the set of The Cleaning Lady in New Mexico. This all allegedly happened between November of 2022 and spring of 2024. The arrest warrant signed by a judge said the charges for 2 counts of criminal sexual contact of a minor. The victim or accuser's only been identified by his initials, but was just 7 and 8 years old at the time. He's also the husband of Melissa Gilbert from Little House on the Prairie, but has his own long history of appearing in TV and movies. All right, take a look at your screens. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Ayanna Mache Jacobs, just 16 years old, missing from Knoxville, Tennessee. If you see Ayanna, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference, 911. 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Knox County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee. That number's on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get Ayanna to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.